scoured by ice and weathered by storms. 20,000 square miles of rugged coastline, lochs and mountains. On the face of it, it looks bleak and lifeless. But wildlife is thriving in this unforgiving place, if you know where to look. The seasons may be harsh, and the opportunities fleeting. But animals and people have found ways to succeed here, turning adversity into advantage. This is Scotland's wild heart, the Highlands. It's late March in the Cairngorm Mountains, and the hills are on fire. The old heather is being put to the torch to stimulate new growth for the grouse season. Traditionally, this inferno marks the end of winter and the start of spring in this wilderness. But spring is the most unpredictable of all seasons in the Highlands. Temperatures regularly range from -10 to 20 degrees. So to achieve success here, animals have to battle with the extremes. It's all about timing. Mate, nest, or give birth at the wrong time, and lives can be lost. But get it right, and these mountains, forests, and rivers provide the perfect place to raise the next generation. It can be so good that some travel thousands of miles to reap the bounty the Highlands has to offer. It's an Osprey, newly arrived from his wintering grounds in West Africa and heading back into the heart of the Highlands. "200 pairs of ospreys make the Highlands' vast network of river, loch and mountain their home. The hills start to rise just 20 miles north of the country's central belt and cover 2/3 of the entire nation. To most of the world, the Highlands define what Scotland is all about. One mile south of iconic Loch Ness, this valley has been home to breeding ospreys for a decade. The female is already on the nest, waiting for her mate. They've spent the winter in different parts of Africa, but ospreys mate for life, and now they're reunited on the same nest they used last year. But after the gales of winter, it needs some urgent home improvements. Already more than 5 feet wide, this platform will need to withstand strong winds, heavy rain, and maybe even sleet or snow. They need to complete the makeover as quickly as possible, because once the eggs are laid, the female won't leave the nest until she's raised her family. For the next 13 weeks, she'll be completely dependent on the male. Spring's the busiest time for the animals in the valley. Brown hares, curlews and stoats are all getting ready for the breeding season. This male roe deer is keeping close watch on a female, but she won't let him near. She's already heavily pregnant and searching for a quiet spot to give birth. The next few days will be critical for all the wild animals here. A new generation is about to arrive. But the conditions are still far from settled. Although it's now April, the temperatures still haven't climbed above 10 degrees. And clouds hang heavy from Loch Awe in the west to the Cairngorms in the east. But in the great Caledonian pine forest of Abernethy, there's change in the air. It's a red squirrel. Although they've been displaced by grey squirrels in most of Britain, they're thriving here in the Caledonian forest. There are 120,000 of them in Scotland, 75% of the British population, and they're increasing. The habitat here is ideal for them, with abundant food and plenty of potential nest sites. With double-jointed ankles and small, sharp claws, they can get up and down trees fast. Early spring is a busy time for red squirrels. Already pregnant with kittens, this female is looking for a comfortable nest site, away from predators. She'll either build a dray from twigs and leaves, or use an uninhabited tree hole. She'll need to keep searching. But this female's territory is large. She's got 17 acres of pine forest and river to search yet. 50 miles beyond the forest on the River Bran, a pair of special Highland birds have already built their nest. They're dippers, birds that are marvelously adapted for life in this fast-changing environment. Britain's only aquatic songbird, dippers have waterproof plumage to keep them dry, and long, flexible feet for gripping slippery rocks. Their white bibs and dark bodies keep them well camouflaged as they dive for insect larvae amongst the boulders and rapids. In spring, these are in plentiful supply. The dippers are working non-stop, as they've already got hungry mouths to feed. Carefully covered by a neat moss dome, the nest's position may look dangerous, but it offers total protection from predators like stoats and weasels. Food goes in, and waste comes out. Even a large fish is delivered, an indication that the chicks are well grown. For now, the river's level is just right for the chicks to make an easy exit. But if heavy rain arrives, the waterfall will become a torrent, which could sweep the nest away. At last the weather is warming. For the first time this year, temperatures climb to 15 degrees. It's now a priority for the Highland animals to feed themselves up, ready for the next phase of spring. Over the next couple of months, the male osprey will need to catch more than 400 fish to keep his family going. He makes hunting look easy, But it's a game of stealth and patience. Only 1 in 4 strikes are successful. He needs to find a fish in the right position and get the speed, angle, and point of entry exactly right. After hitting the water and grabbing the fish, the game still isn't over for the Osprey and its quarry. He needs to get airborne again. His talons are equipped with adhesive scales and long curved claws for an unbreakable hold. But a big trout can match him weight for weight, and the instinct of the fish is to swim down. There are tales of weak and hungry ospreys being dragged to the bottom, unable to release the fish or lift off from the water successfully. But osprey wings are adapted to give maximum lift from the water. And this male is young and strong. This is a struggle he's destined to win. He carries the fish head first, making it easier to fly the 20-mile journey home. Back in the valley, the female waits in the nest. The need to feed is even more urgent now. She's no longer alone in the nest. There are definitely chicks in there. They're not the valley's only new arrivals. Deep in the long grass, at the edge of the field, lies another new baby. With immaculate camouflage, it instinctively lies motionless. The roe deer has given birth. Leaving her offspring alone like this seems like a high-risk strategy. But the mother needs to feed, and the youngster is too young to run away from danger, so hiding is the only option. The mother approaches warily. She mustn't reveal the location to any watching predators like eagles or foxes. But it's not predators that are the greatest threat to young roe deer. A sudden drop in spring temperatures could be fatal. The male osprey is back with the fish. He's now got a lot more mouths to feed. There are 3 hungry chicks in the nest. Fueled by their high-protein fish diet, osprey chicks become full size in just 5 weeks. And once they're 12 weeks old, they face an even bigger test: a flight to distant Africa. Just 1 mile north of the Osprey's Valley lies the Great Glen. Once a mighty glacier, it divides the Highlands in 2. At its heart is the most famous body of water in Scotland. Loch Ness. It deserves its legendary reputation. 23 miles long, it contains more fresh water than all the lakes in England and Wales combined. As for the monster, it still hasn't been found. But the Highlands are full of mysterious creatures. It's 4 a.m. in Abernethy Forest, and something is stirring. Capercaillie, the world's biggest grouse. There are just over 1,000 left in Scotland, and their stronghold is here in the pine forest. Their bizarre popping call penetrates deep into the forest. It attracts the females to a ritualistic display called a lek. Here, in a forest clearing, the males will compete for the right to mate exclusively with all the females. Weighing in at more than 4 kilos, this young male is in superb condition. But an older male is up for the fight too. This veteran, with a bald patch on his neck, has been king of the lek for many years. The females look on from the treetops, desperate to see which suitor will be victorious. It's time to raise the stakes. Game on. They're evenly matched. It's simply a question of who gives way first. The younger male is on the run, handing victory to the dominant older bird. Like an emperor of the forest, he's retained mastery of the lek. All the females are his. Nearby, the female squirrel is feeding on pine cones. The small seeds between the scales are a protein-rich food source, and she needs extra nourishment now. She's just given birth. There are 2 new kittens, hidden deep in her dray, high up in a Scots pine. Soft moss is ideal for lining the nest. Squirrels are fastidiously clean animals. But the tiny and blind babies can't leave the nest for a toilet break. So regularly changing the bedding is an important part of the female squirrel's routine. Although the dray is only 10 inches across, it takes at least 6 mouthfuls of moss to fill it up and make it snug. Once the youngsters are able to grip and climb, they'll start leaving the dray to explore. But that's still many weeks away. So for now, she's stuck with this time-consuming chore. High above Abernethy Forest, snow is still lying thick and deep on Cairngorm, Cairntoul and Ben Macdui. But it's the 1st of May, and spring is picking up pace. Further down on the moorland edge, wildflowers are coming into bloom. Bumblebees are buzzing, and newborn lambs are playing.
empty your bucket in this then.
But despite the sunshine, the hill farmers know that it's still too early to risk taking the sheep onto the mountains. Even in May, heavy snow can fall in the Highlands. So for now, they'll feed them here in the valley, close to the farm. But for the wild creatures of the Highlands, there's no chance of holding back and waiting for better conditions. They just have to make the best of it, whatever the weather. Tawny owl and wagtail chicks are already on the verge of independence. And the osprey chicks are growing fast too, demanding more and more fish from the male. The roe deer can sense changes coming. Her youngster is now more mobile, and she's instinctively moving it towards higher ground. It could be a wise move. This valley has flooded many times in the past. She can't help it across the fence. Now it's a week old, it has to work the problem out for itself. The weather has taken a turn for the worst. It's deteriorating fast. Temperatures are sliding into single figures, and a cold front is now sweeping in from the Atlantic. Heavy rain is on its way. The three osprey chicks huddle beneath their mother's wings. The nest is vulnerable now. Spring downpours like this have been known to destroy osprey nests. For the Dipper family, the situation is far more serious. Practically a month's rain has fallen in 24 hours, and the river is still rising. torrent has completely obscured the little nest, and the adults can only get in and out by flying behind the wall of water. It's the worst possible time for the chicks to fledge. But the adults are calling them out. There's no option now. If they stay inside any longer, they'll be drowned. They're in mortal danger. Young dippers are weak flyers. One mistake, and it's all over. One across. The other four seem reluctant to go. The female has stopped feeding the chicks to encourage them out. If they're to eat, they must leave. They're using the same route as the first chick. But the surface is wet and slippery. There's just one left in the nest. It's made it across. They're all out on their own. The chicks are desperate for food. But rather than help her young, the female goes straight back to repair the nest for a second brood. The desire to reproduce is more powerful than feeding the newly fledged young. Without guidance from the adults, the chicks could still be washed away. This one's far too close to the edge. But the male is calling him upriver, away from danger. Little by little. And at last he gets his feed. Now for the first dip. Dipper chicks need to swim well from soon after they emerge. In a week, their father's attention will end, and they'll have to catch their own food. Despite the perilous location, dippers have nested here on this Highland river for many years. And hopefully, will be here for generations yet. At last, after 2 days of constant rain, the weather has cleared. The osprey nest is intact. The young roe deer is thriving. And the squirrel kittens make their first forays from the dray. Now temperatures are rising. And the Caledonian pine forest is awakening. Warmed by the rays of the sun, the understory now seethes with life. They're Scottish wood ants. Over 6 feet wide and teeming with a colony 100,000 strong, this nest has stood in the heart of the forest for decades. With the sun now high overhead, the ants will do everything they can to get the benefits of the warmth it brings. Teams of female worker ants sunbathe on the surface in shifts. Once they've heated up, they travel deep into the nest to transfer their warmth to the eggs and larvae in the brood chambers. On the forest floor, ants swarm along regular trails, capturing insects to bring back to the nest for food. Because these insects eat plants, this in turn protects trees and saplings from destruction. So remarkably, these tiny ants safeguard the future of the forest. Rare timberman beetles also emerge in spring. With antennae 4 times the length of his body, this is the longest insect in Britain, and another real pine forest speciality. He's just emerged as an adult, after spending 2 years as a bark-eating grub. And he's on a mission to mate. Quite why the antennae are so long is something of a mystery. But it's certain that picking up the smell, sound, and taste of a female beetle is a major reason for their incredible length. He's got a female in his sights. A successful meeting. The female will now lay her eggs in a suitable cleft in the bark, but it will be the last act of her life. The adult beetles live for just a couple of months. Back in the valley, the osprey chicks are exercising their young wings in the sun. They're almost ready to fly. And they're not the only ones enjoying the warmth. Common lizards live in the dry stone wall beneath the nest. The Highlands are on the very northerly edge of their range, as they can't live without sunshine. So now is the time they're most active. They're safe from the fish-eating ospreys, but they do have enemies. Adders, Scotland's only poisonous snakes. The lizards need to constantly watch for danger. But today the snakes are unlikely to strike. They're about to shed their skins. Yawning wide may help stretch the skin to help it split. But the molt will take many days. And the lizards are safe. For now. The female osprey's calling an alarm. And down go the chicks into the bowl of the nest. There's an intruder in the valley. It's another osprey, a male who's failed to find his own territory this year, and he wants to move in. He wouldn't try to kill the chicks, but if they were knocked from the nest, they'd be unable to fly back to safety. That's far too close. Time for direct action from the male. And up flies the female. Female ospreys are much bigger than males and quite capable of seeing off an unwanted intruder. Especially when there are chicks in the nest. The family is safe. It's now only a matter of days before the youngsters make their first flight. The wheel of the seasons is turning. and spring is rapidly becoming summer. The mountains and glens are at their greenest as the natural world enters its busiest time in the Highlands. And nowhere is this more evident than in the sea. Here in the Moray Firth, a pod of dolphins are heading to a feast. They're bottlenose dolphins, one of 23 different species of cetacean that have been seen off Scottish coasts. Nearly 200 individuals have been recorded here, socializing, breeding and hunting together. They usually seek out mackerel, squid and herring, but there is one species of fish that the bottlenose dolphins prize above all others. Atlantic salmon. With Highland rivers now swollen to the brink due to heavy rain, the fish are heading towards the interior to start their journeys to the spawning grounds. And the dolphins will be waiting for them. The best place to ambush the fish is Chanonry Point near Inverness. The tidal run here means the fish are directed into a deep and narrow channel, where the dolphins wait to ambush them in the murky, fast-moving water. Very big fish are running today. Some are 20 pounds or more. But swallowing such a huge fish isn't easy. They need to slip down in exactly the right way, and that means regurgitating and re-swallowing until the position is exactly right. Sometimes twisting your body actually seems to help. And down it goes. Over the next few weeks, the dolphins will be catching more and more salmon as the fish start their migratory journey into the heart of the Highlands. But other migrants will be leaving the Highlands behind. In the valley, there are big changes. All 3 chicks have learned to fly and are spending longer and longer out of the nest. Now the chicks can fly independently, their parents are preparing to switch roles. For 9 weeks, the male has caught every single fish, while Mum has delivered all the care in the nest. Now the entire burden of childcare will shift to him. For the next fortnight, it'll be his job to teach them all he knows about how to soar, dive, and catch fish before they head off on their epic migration. As for the female, relieved of her parental duties, she's already on her way south, starting out on the 3,000-mile journey to West Africa. The extreme spring weather of the Scottish Highlands provides endless challenges for all its residents. But animals here are resilient, adaptable, and strong. For them, these mountains, forests, and rivers offer unmatched opportunity. That's why the ospreys will return here year after year. Back to their home, in Scotland's living wild heart. Next time, Highland animals race towards independence before summer's end. Young otters need to stop playing and learn to catch fish. Golden eagles ceaselessly hunt for mountain hares. And tiny Guillemot chicks face a desperate leap for life as they fall to the sea from 400-foot cliffs. Of all the seasons in the Highlands, summer is the most intense. But it's also the richest, with seas and mountains yielding their greatest bounty. By midsummer, the sun will rule for nearly 18 hours a day. For the animals of the Highlands, it's a race to raise offspring before the days shorten and the storms of autumn arrive. Some work together in pairs, whilst others are single mothers, fishing, hunting, and caring for their young. Nowhere feels this intensity more than the Northern Highlands. With over 1,000 miles of wild coast and some of the largest peat bogs on the planet, this is a true wilderness. And it's wildlife, not people, that dominate this landscape. Handa Island, just off the Sutherland coast, is of global importance. Every crevice of the 400-foot sandstone cliffs is occupied. Puffins, razorbills, kittiwakes and fulmars all breed here. But it's guillemots that dominate. Over 30,000 pairs come to these cliffs each summer to breed. It's one of the most important colonies in Europe. Guillemots have evolved to fill the same ecological niche as their southern cousins, penguins. And although they can fly, it's fair to describe them as the penguins of the north. Marine specialists, their wings are built more for diving than flying. And like penguins, they're clumsy on land. Spaces are fiercely guarded, each pair defending a patch only a few inches wide. Eggs are already appearing. Each has a unique signature pattern, so that the parents can recognize it laying on the bare rock, less than 4 inches from the edge. The bond between this lifelong pair is now critical, as they take turns to brood their egg. They won't leave it unguarded for a second. It's a wise move. Predators have arrived. At double the size and weight of a guillemot, this herring gull is a serious threat. He knows these cliffs well and has timed his own brood to coincide with this bounty. A specialist hunter, he's learned how to steal the large guillemot eggs. He patrols the vast cliff ledges. Watching intently for a break in the ranks. Sensing his movements, the guillemot calls escalate. But there are advantages to nesting so tightly packed. Their bills are razor sharp. And like a line of spears, they protect their precious eggs below. It's effective. But the gull has spotted a new opportunity. An egg has rolled out of line. He takes his chance. And is finally rewarded. Losing their egg this early, the pair should have a chance to lay again. But they'll be behind, and their chick smaller than its neighbours. All the chicks here have an even greater challenge to face. At just 3 weeks old and unable to fly, they must make an epic leap, 400 feet down to the swell of the Atlantic. And a new array of predators is already gathering. A 100 miles south of Handa, near the Isle of Mull, the early morning tide is on the rise, sweeping fish closer to the shore. The local fishermen are in action. It's a family of otters. Early summer means the seas are warming, bringing more food to the Highland coasts. And this family are fishing on every tide. Born in a secret shoreside holt early in the year, these two 6-month-old cubs are at a turning point in their lives. Their hard-working single mother must now teach them how to catch their own food, seeking out hidden crabs and chasing fish. But the cubs still have a lot to learn. Handling a live fish takes practice. And they're constantly squabbling over the prize. Whilst they're occupied, she can fish for her own meal. She's determined to keep this one away from the cubs. In these calm conditions, fishing is easy. But when the autumn storms arrive, it'll be a different story. The cubs must learn these skills soon. Waiting for the next tide to resume lessons, the family settles. Otter fur is amongst the densest in the world. Nearly 400,000 hairs per square inch helps keep these animals warm and waterproof. So they need to regularly maintain it. She'll make the most of these bountiful summer days, ceaselessly teaching her cubs the skills they need for independence. Finding and maintaining the best territory is half the battle for all the animals here. Everyone wants a piece of the Highlands in summer. It'll be some months before the peaks are free from snow. But on the small lochans of the Cairngorms, new arrivals from the coast are laying claim to their summer patch. Slavonian grebes. One of Scotland's rarest birds. Less than 30 pairs breed here. They're often the last of all the Highland birds to breed, as they must wait for the vegetation to grow tall enough to conceal their nest, which makes them vulnerable to an early autumn. Some of their neighbours are much further ahead. Golden-eye ducks are making use of specially provided boxes, and since the 1970s have become regular breeders here. This female has been brooding her eggs for weeks, but in the last 12 hours, everything has changed. Newly hatched ducklings. She needs to get her brood to the water fast. Noise will attract predators. The local pine marten has already arrived to investigate. A duckling is an ideal meal. She calls them out. And at just a few hours old, the ducklings make their first leap into the summer sun. And straight to the loch. Instinct kicks in immediately, and they start diving for food. Hatching early in the season, these ducklings will have the whole summer to reach adulthood. And the water is safe, as long as they stay together. With the sun now rising at 5 a.m. each day, the breeding season is now well underway. Castles like this one in Deeside are havens for wildlife. Their well-tended gardens are already buzzing with insects. House martens, one of the last summer migrants to arrive from Africa, find Balmoral's turrets and windows the perfect nesting spots, and are the ideal perch to watch for royal visitors. But the one who truly deserves the title King of the Highlands is the top predator of these hills and glens. The golden eagle. With a 7-foot wingspan, it soars across the landscape with ease. Territories cover thousands of acres of rugged mountain, forests and heather moor. The Highlands have some of the highest breeding densities in the world. And hidden deep in the forest, 40 feet up in an ancient Caledonian pine, is the eagle's eyrie. This year, the nest is full. One of Britain's largest birds of prey, these eaglets will take nearly 3 months to fledge. So to reap the availability of summer prey, eggs were laid when snow still covered the ground. Now at 8 weeks old, they're growing fast. They'll one day rule these skies. But for now, they're totally dependent. Despite their size and power, golden eagles are shy birds, wary of any disturbance. At the nest, they show a tender side. carefully selecting choice morsels for their young. They must hunt often. Eaglets can eat 700 grams of meat a day. The male will do most of the early hunting. He needs these long summer days to provide for his growing chicks. The surrounding hills are perfect for hunting. Mountain hare leverets born a few weeks ago are now in peak numbers. It pays to be alert. Young hares make up more than half of this pair's diet, with parents catching up to 3 a day. On the Guillemot ledges, weeks of guarding and brooding the eggs have paid off. The first chicks have hatched. Parents now shield them from the hot summer sun. Highland summers are warming, altering the complex ocean dynamics and making fish shoals harder to reach. If the parents can't catch enough, chicks will simply starve on the ledges. A tragic consequence of climate change, and one all seabirds here may face in the future. The pair must now work tirelessly to feed their single chick. Expert fishermen, they can travel nearly 60 miles to reach the best fishing grounds, and can dive more than 600 feet to catch fish. But with wings evolved more for swimming, landing is difficult. And running the gauntlet of their neighbours is hard work with a fish supper on show. The chick finally gets its meal. It'll need 3 of these rich sand eels a day if it's to grow large enough to jump alongside the others. High up in the forest canopy, the young eagles are still waiting for their next meal. Hunger can drive eaglets to extreme behavior, attacking their siblings to ensure they alone are fed. The first hatchling is always larger and stronger and has the advantage. And there's nowhere to hide. Moving too close to the edge is risky. A fall would be fatal. And young eaglets often tumble to their deaths in this situation. At last, it's an adult with a freshly killed hare, and the larger chick puts itself right in front for the feed. A long and eventful road still lies ahead for this pair. The eaglets won't fly until summer has almost passed. Beneath the nest on the forest floor, another predator is on a mission. It's a female pine marten. During winter and spring, she's only active at night. But now, as daylight lengthens, she's becoming more and more visible. Like the female otter, she's solely responsible for raising her kits and has found the perfect den for her young family. A cozy rooftop. The loft insulation makes for excellent bedding, and the kits are warm and secure while she's out hunting. The martens happily tolerate the owner working below. They've grown accustomed to the sounds of the workshop. Now, with their eyes open, these inquisitive young kits are starting to explore. They won't be here for much longer. The mother will soon need to give them prey, and she can't carry that to the roof. They'll have to move out to the forest, and these cozy days will soon be over. Handa Island is now at its busiest. Constant fishing trips are needed to feed the growing chicks. It's a risky commute. Great skuas patrol the cliff face like pirates, ready to rob the guillemots of their hard-earned fish. Skuas are agile birds. Their longer wingspan makes them perfectly adapted to twist and turn, outmaneuvering the guillemots. The guillemots are bullied into dropping their catch. Chases can be long and intense. And the only way to escape is to dive. Such constant bombardment is costly. Parents have lost over 15% of their body weight since the chick hatched. They desperately need to get their chick out to sea, closer to the fish and away from the predators. But it's a long way down, and the chick still can't fly. It's midsummer, and the Highlands are approaching their longest day. The solstice has arrived. With the sun above the horizon for over 18 hours, light now rules. But from now on, day length will shorten. The scales of the season have tipped. For the wildlife, it's now a race to the finish. At the furthest northern tip of the Highlands, Caithness and Sutherland are closer to the Arctic Circle than parts of southern England. They're home to one of the world's rarest habitats, the blanket peat bog. Known here as the flow country, over 200,000 hectares of deep layered peat are studded with a myriad of small pools. It's an otherworldly landscape, where submerged plants are compressed over millennia, storing 400 million tons of carbon, more than twice that found in all of Britain's forests combined. On the surface, this place can appear bleak and lifeless. But look closely, and it's teeming with life. On a warm midsummer's evening, a drama unfolds in the depths of a peat pool. This world is inhabited by strange and alien-looking creatures. Dragonfly nymphs hunt in the open water. Caddisfly larvae create protective cases from plants and tiny stones, each species making its own unique and intricate design. This emerald damselfly nymph is ready to leave this world. For the short 3 months of its life, it's only known this small pool. Yet the warm evening makes it do something unthinkable. He wriggles to break open his casing. Revealing his new form. No longer water creature, but unable to fly yet, he's now vulnerable. Over the next few hours, he pumps special fluid into his abdomen and wings, making them gradually unfold and harden. And with enough warmth in the air, he finally takes flight. For most of the year, the human population of the Highlands is small. But once summer holidays arrive, numbers more than double. Towns like Oban are busy hubs for travel to the islands. These summer months may be the busiest for tourists, but they aren't necessarily the sunniest. And a large percentage of the 150 inches of rain a year is almost guaranteed to fall now. The Handa Guillemots have seen it all before. They can live to be 30 years old, so they'll encounter many wet summers in their lives. Adult plumage is waterproof, but the chicks are still covered in down and can easily chill, so they huddle close to the adults. A 150 miles south, the mountains of Jura are directly in the path of incoming rain clouds, making it one of the wettest places in the Highlands. Red deer can't wait for the rain to lift. Now heavily pregnant, the hinds have carried their young through the toughest winter months and must give birth soon. New calves are appearing everywhere in the wet grass. It's a harsh habitat to be born into. Most hinds here only produce a calf every other year. At a few weeks old, this male calf is still dependent on his mother's milk and will not venture far. Once the rain finally clears, there's another problem to contend with. The Scottish midge. Attracted by the carbon dioxide in the deer's breath, midgie swarms build to their trillions as summer progresses. Against the light, they're mesmerizing, almost beautiful. But they're intolerable to the young calf and his mother. Luckily, there is something that feasts on the midges. Surprisingly, it's a plant. Carnivorous sundew now carpet the wet bogs. Their glistening droplets are irresistible to insects, luring them in. Once trapped in the sticky drops, the sundews slowly digest the insects. An important source of nitrogen in these nutrient-poor soils. The strength of the summer sun is now waning. And the eaglets on their treetop nest are close to fledging. Having consumed hundreds of prey items between them, each chick now weighs close to 4 kilos. The pile of waste, bones and flies is becoming unbearable. It's one of the reasons eagles regularly change their nest sites. Their behavior is changing too, and they practice gripping with their huge 2-inch-long talons. This eaglet already instinctively shields its food, though it hasn't quite perfected the art yet. But their greatest challenge is still to come. Learning to fly and joining their parents in the Highland skies. They'll need to cover huge distances to find enough food to survive here. Wing flapping is important to build up flight muscles. There aren't many of these summer days left, and even a slight breeze now rocks the nest. It won't be long before they must take to the skies. On Jura, the red deer calf is starting to explore his world. Something new has caught his attention. It's a group of stags moving down from the hills. In near peak condition, with their antlers still cased in soft velvet. They're intent on eating, fattening themselves up for the autumn rut, when bulk and strength will be crucial. The calf isn't sure what to make of them. He instinctively seems to know what to do. finally getting his attention. It's not impossible that in 5 years' time he could fight this stag for real and have his chance to roar in these glens. It's late summer, and once more the sun is shining throughout the Highlands. It's time to celebrate. Clan gatherings like these at Lochern Head in Perthshire are happening right across the region. With people spread over such a vast landscape, a sense of community is important. The traditional events go back centuries and test many of the skills that wildlife too needs to thrive here. Speed, strength, stamina, and agility. On Handa Island, the seabirds are also preparing for a dramatic event. For nearly 2 months, the Guillemots have endured endless attacks from predators while desperately trying to feed their growing chicks. They can no longer keep up with the demand. They must get their chicks to sea. It's time to jump. Adults call, luring their chicks towards the edge. Some are less developed than others, but once one jumps, they'll all go for it. Males call from the sea, a stomach churning 400 feet below. The young chicks, known as jumplings, move towards the edge for the first time. Finally, one makes the leap. With tiny, unformed wings, they have little control over their death-defying jump. Flattening their bodies, they try to slow their descent before hitting the water at breakneck speed. The whole colony is on the move, with chicks diving from every ledge, while the sea below fills with reunited families. one chick is smaller than the others and is reluctant to leave the ledge. Despite persistent calls from its parents below, it will not jump. Being the last left on the cliffs, it's in real danger. Evening is approaching, and predators are arriving. A lone chick will not last long. Others have also left home. The pine marten loft is empty. The forest is now the kit's home. This late summer evening may be one of the last in which they see daylight. One kit is already hunting for himself, making use of his mother's territory to catch his first mouse. Fantastic climbers, they're perfectly at home in the treetops, and their sense of smell will guide them once darkness falls. They must learn all they can from their mother now. In the autumn, as food becomes scarce, she'll drive them out of her territory. Nearby, the Slavonian grebes are still resident on the loch. For 2 summers they have failed to produce any young. But this year is different. Their single precious chick is fed on aquatic larvae and sticklebacks. Among the last breeding birds of the Highland summer, this pair have just a few short weeks to nurture their chick to independence. Back on the ledges, the mood is not so calm. Darkness is fast approaching, and the lone Guillemot chick still hasn't jumped. Its parent returns, desperately calling, encouraging it down. But its jump is not far enough. And now there's a new problem. It's wandered into razorbill territory. They'll attack intruders on their ledge. The parent calls it out. But at each step, the Guillemots enter a new territory. The chick is under constant attack, and there's still a long way to go. Ledge by ledge, they descend together. But the chick is now tiring. It's reached the last ledge. The parent can do no more. A razorbill makes a final attack. Unable to steer, it's heading straight for the rocks. But Guillemot chicks have dense, downy feathers. And incredibly, it's unharmed by the fall. And finds its father. Raising young like this is one of the highest risk strategies in the bird world. But now safely at sea with its parent by its side, the chick can begin the real challenge of learning to be a seabird. Spending 2 years on the wild ocean before seeing these cliffs again. Not all will leave their local patch. The Otter family has good fishing territory here and will remain close to this stretch of coastline. But the female senses the seasons changing. Keeping her cubs close, she'll guide them through their first Highland winter. And together they'll face the weather to come. And weather will certainly come. Already winds are building from the Atlantic. Time for breeding has run out. Beyond the wild coasts of Duncansby Head, a pod of orcas roll and play in the surf. Gale force winds and towering seas are no challenge to them. But for the breeding animals of the Highlands, everything has changed. And they'll need new strategies to cope with the season to come. The great race of summer is over. But the trials of the season have been worthwhile. The young eagles have finally taken to the skies. And the next generation are ready to face the autumn. Next time, as autumn storms hit, seal pups fight for their lives against all odds. And the winter freeze arrives. Testing the animals of the Highlands to their absolute limits. It's October in the Northwest Highlands, and the forests of GLEN Africa are flushed with gold. It's a still, crisp, perfect morning. But this is a shallow beauty. With the brief summer now past, The animals of the Highlands are in for the long haul. The next few months will see them driven to desperate measures. As they prepare for the lockdown of the Highlands' longest, darkest, and most overwhelming season. It'll be April before the sun rises clear of these peaks again. Some take flight, seeking refuge in the warm south. But those that remain will need every drop of resilience they can muster. Only the toughest will survive what the elements are about to throw at the Highlands. Here among the mountains, you have to be perfectly adapted to make it through. With 4 of the 5 highest peaks in the Highlands, this is the most extensive alpine terrain in Scotland. At these altitudes, heavy snow can arrive in almost any month, and it lies here all year round. But one animal has got what it takes to live here. Once extinct in these mountains, but living and breeding here once again. They're reindeer. Reintroduced in the 1950s, after an absence of over 8,000 years, they're better adapted to these extreme conditions than any other Scottish mammal. Like many of the world's reindeer herds, people look after these animals. But for most of the year, they're left to fend for themselves on these wild hills. Calves are born in the spring. But reindeer are large animals with an 8-month gestation period. So to make the most of the good times, they need to mate now, before the winter lockdown takes hold. In their short rut, triggered by decreasing day length, a dominant male will try to mate with as many females as possible. Each will only be receptive for a short time, so it's crucial the rut happens now. This distinctive dark male has ruled the herd for 2 years. But this year, he's got competition. This paler bull is exactly the same age, but he's never beaten the dark male, so he's been unable to father even a single calf. This year could mark the end of his losing streak, but he'll need to pick exactly the right moment for his challenge. And he's only got a few days to do it. The Cairngorms National Park is by far the biggest in the UK. Larger than Luxembourg, it contains more native forest than any other part of Britain. Much of this is evergreen Scots pine. But there are over 10,000 acres of broadleaf woodland here too. In these forests, autumn is a fruitful time, with the trees casting berries and nuts on the forest floor. They're a critical food source, for red squirrels. This little female has already seen more than her fair share of winters. At 6 years old, she's already lived double the average for a red squirrel. Perhaps it's the richness of this place, with its supply of beech and hazelnuts, which has sustained her for so long. She's not alone here. Bearing a distinctive battle-scarred nose, her neighbour is almost as old. Outside the breeding season, red squirrels are usually tolerant of each other. But these two constantly compete over the available resources. Tail swishing means keep your distance. But all this scrapping is using up valuable energy. And the long haul hasn't even started yet. Although the Highlands are known for their clear autumn days, October and November are amongst the wettest months of the year, with rain falling on 2 out of 3 days. But this autumn deluge is a critical part of the life cycle of one animal. Atlantic salmon. Here at the Falls of Shin, 30 miles north of Inverness, big numbers are gathering. Returning from their 2,000-mile ocean migration, they're getting ready to move upriver. Their eggs can only survive in the shallow headwaters of Highland rivers, high up in the mountains. So raised water levels present them with their best chance of reaching the spawning grounds. They must time it right if their offspring are to survive and make their own journey out to sea. But there's a problem. The falls are blocking the salmon's path. There's only one way to get around them, and that is to go over them. It's a game of persistence and luck. Launching themselves above the sill requires formidable acceleration. Their muscles are adapted for short, sharp bursts of energy. Leaps can cover more than 3 meters. And although they fail time after time, their desire to push on is so strong they never give up. But clearing the falls is only the first challenge. Ahead of them lies a grueling journey to their spawning grounds on the western fringes of the Highlands. Back on the Cairngorm Plateau, the pale reindeer bull has made the decision to challenge the dominant male. It's a well-timed move. The dark bull has been mating and he's tired. To win the fight, the pale bull will need to force his way up the hill and drive the ruling male down into the valley. But the dark bull takes the initiative and moves down to block his rival's advance. Grunting and pacing are all part of the build-up. Game on. Reindeer battles can carry on for many hours, but they rarely fight to the death. They're equally matched. It's all about who'll tire first. Close to exhaustion, but neither will back down. Little by little, the pale bull pushes his rival up the slope. Quick turn. And it's all over. They're both completely exhausted. The dark male doesn't have the spirit for another round and heads for the edge of the herd. For the first time, the pale bull will have his chance to breed. In the forest, the red squirrels are working frantically. Hoarding food is an important way of getting through the coldest months, and the old squirrel is burying nuts on the forest floor. Before each nut is stored, it's assessed. Weight and smell will tell her if it's good or bad. And as she handles each one, it's marked with her unique scent. A good spatial memory and a highly developed sense of smell will allow her to find it later in the winter. But the forest floor is a dangerous place for a tree-loving mammal. A pheasant is no threat. But birds of prey like buzzards will readily snatch an off-guard squirrel. She freezes on the spot, with her eyes fixed on the danger. She's safe. But while she's been sitting tight, her neighbour has been helping herself to the cache. Remarkably, the old squirrel has a strategy to deal with this and confuses her thieving neighbour by pretending to bury a nut before moving it elsewhere. It looks like a game, but these preparations are urgent and serious. A cold front is sweeping in from the east. The Highlands are on the cusp of winter. "80 miles east, on the Aberdeenshire coast near the Loch of Strathbeg, visitors are arriving for winter. Pink-footed geese. They've travelled more than 600 miles non-stop from their breeding grounds in Iceland. To them, the Highlands offer a sanctuary from the unbearable conditions further north. Over the next few months, they'll spread out across the fertile wetlands on the edges of the Highlands. More than 80,000 will arrive on these beaches after their marathon journey. But they can't rest here long. It's 48 hours since they've fed, and they must head to more fertile grounds. It's early November, and animals are making their final preparations for winter. "90 miles north, on Capercaillie in the Orkney Islands, one of the last and most dramatic events of all is playing out. Every other Highland animal completes their breeding cycle in summer, but grey seals are an exception to the rule. Breeding now because it takes the whole of summer and early autumn to feed themselves into peak condition for pupping. Once they're on the beaches, neither females or males will feed. And all births will happen in just a few weeks. This pup was born weighing 13 kilos. But because grey seal milk is 50% fat, he'll gain 2 kilos a day, more than trebling his weight in just 3 weeks. Once he's weaned, the mother will turn her attention to the bulls. She's looking for one type of bull in particular. The biggest and strongest. This huge battle-scarred male controls the beach and its harem of females. The smaller bulls daren't challenge him. They sit on the waterline, testing each other's strength in the shallows. But the dominant bull doesn't get involved in small skirmishes. He doesn't need to. The female seals swim straight to him, bypassing the younger, less dominant males. Grey seal courtship starts with splashing and scrapping. But unusually for a large mammal, it then relaxes into a tender embrace. Soon, both mating and pupping will have to cease. As the biggest storm of the season is on its way. Back on the mainland, the weather is settled. And the salmon are on the move. Their journey from coast to spawning grounds can cover many miles. And the complete trip can take more than 6 months. They don't eat anything on their migration, so why they strike at an angler's fly is still a complete mystery. But the vast majority evade even the most skilled fishermen. The fish are driven ever onwards by an ability to sense unique chemicals from the remote mountain burns where they spent the first few years of their lives. After an extraordinary journey, they've finally come home. And now they're ready to complete their life cycle. Females seek out sheltered positions where their eggs will have the best chance of survival. The males have changed dramatically. To show dominance, their jaws have curved upwards, exposing rows of ferocious-looking teeth. Charged with testosterone, this male's intolerant of any imposter, even a juvenile salmon. He moves in on the female. Using her body, she digs a hollow in the riverbed where she'll safely lay her eggs. She's ready. The male moves in. Releasing his sperm as the eggs appear. The salmon have completed their breeding cycle. Conditions may be calm in the northwest, but on Capercaillie, it couldn't be more different. The storm has arrived. Wind gusts can exceed 100 miles an hour on this exposed coast. And the waves tower to more than 12 feet. Climate change may be behind the increase in huge storms like this. Potentially disastrous for wildlife. Grey seal pups are too young to swim, so they're hauling themselves up onto the field beyond the beach. This one's become separated from its mother. It's tired and hungry. At just a few days old, it needs 2.5 liters of milk a day to survive. If it can't find its mother quickly, it'll die. Other females are highly territorial and attack pups in their patch, so it must keep moving to stay alive. In sheer desperation, it tries to suckle from another pup's flippers. It's weakening fast and burning precious energy. Malnutrition is the most common cause of death in seal pups. But astonishingly, the mother has found her way back to the lost pup. And at last, it's safe. As the sea calms, something remarkable happens. Cannibalism. The dominant bull is feasting on the carcass of a pup. Possibly one swept into the waves by the power of the storm. This strange and disturbing behavior is a recent discovery. hardly ever seen, and never filmed before. Scientists aren't sure why grey seals have turned cannibal. It could be pure hunger or dwindling fish resources. But whatever the reason, the behavior seems to be on the increase. With the breeding cycle completed, the male salmon lies exhausted in the water. As spawning salmon don't eat once they enter the breeding cycle, their muscle fat will only sustain them for a limited period. He's a shadow of the powerful fish that leapt the falls back in early October. Despite these incredible challenges, 5% of salmon actually make it back to the ocean. But not this one. His body will now become food for the same tiny creatures that will sustain his own offspring once they hatch. It's now mid-November, and the Highlands are looking straight into the jaws of winter. For the first time since March, temperatures drop below zero. And it starts to snow. A heavy fall like this early in the season is rare. But soon the entire region, from Glencoe in the west to the high tops of the Cairngorms, is coated in fresh powder. But this is the beginning of the winter lockdown. With grass and heather buried beneath the snow, the struggle for the animals will inevitably become tougher over the next few weeks. But these conditions are perfect for one species, which is flocking to the mountains in droves. Humans. With 5 resorts and up to 100 days of snow a year, the Highlands have been an important ski area since the 1950s. The ski centre on Cairngorm Mountain is also a magnet for wildlife. A ptarmigan. This Arctic member of the grouse family is at home on the very highest peaks of the Cairngorms and Western Highlands. Able to survive on a meager diet of heather, they molt into a pure white plumage for the winter. There are white mountain hares here too. They can also survive on the withering shoots at the edge of the snowfield. There's a reason why the ptarmigan and hares choose to live here. As the winter lockdown sets in, predators like golden eagles range widely to find food. But they're shy birds and will stay away from human activity at all costs. So as long as the ptarmigan and hares stay close to the skiers, they should remain safe. But it's a dangerous game. Although the eagles won't venture near people, they're less troubled by the lifts and buildings. So the ptarmigan and hares need to keep watch at all times. By December standards, it's been a huge dump of snow. In Abernethy Forest, at the foot of the Cairngorms, the drifts lie deep. Small birds like crested tits are now vulnerable. In the UK, they're only found in these highland forests. The breeding population is around 2,000 pairs, but a harsh winter can decimate their numbers. A resident of the canopy in the summer, winter brings them down to the forest floor to feed. Like red squirrels, crested tits cache food. And it's a matter of urgency to dig up the stash of seeds for fresh energy. Small songbirds are unable to carry much fat, so they need to feed constantly. They've got competition. Coal tits will raid crested tit caches. And even though the crested tits are bigger, persistence pays off. But squandering energy through fighting would be dangerous now. The lockdown has only just arrived, and far worse is on the way. Pressure is falling. and storm-force winds hammer in from the west. It's a blizzard. But these are the conditions that make reindeer such masters of the Highland winter. Reindeer coats are double layered. A dense fuzzy underfur provides a warm base. And the long outer hairs are hollow and filled with air to provide superb insulation. Even feeding is no problem. The powerful winds prevent the buildup of snow, and having huge spade-like feet means that reindeer can easily dig up heather and lichens. Ptarmigan also take the blizzard in their stride. Their thick winter plumage includes feathers around the feet that act like snowshoes. The snow bunting also has warm feathers around its tiny toes. Up to 15,000 of these migrants arrive in the Highlands in winter, and often follow animals like reindeer to take advantage of the food exposed by the scraping and digging. The blizzard is easing, but 60% of the Highlands have now been covered by snow for the best part of 3 weeks. And the flakes just keep on falling. For the red squirrels, food caches are a lifesaver. But supplies are running desperately short. And now, where there were once 2 squirrels, just one remains. Unable to cope with this savage opening to winter, the older female has already succumbed. The old squirrel's death has thrown a lifeline to her neighbor. Able to exploit twice as many food caches, her chances of surviving this brutal winter have been significantly raised. The Highlands are now approaching the winter solstice, the longest night of the year. In the Highlands, this means more than 18 hours of darkness. But the rule of night is challenged. The Northern Lights. Generated by gas in the Earth's atmosphere, colliding with charged particles from the sun, the lights can dance until dawn. And now, each day, the sun will rise a few minutes earlier. The light is returning. The weather is warming too. Although the snow still lies deep from the Trossachs to the Cairngorms, the thaw has begun. The small rise in temperature is triggering new behaviour from the ptarmigan and hares. The beginnings of courtship. Female mountain hares can come into season in the depths of winter if temperatures climb above freezing. And males will try and find as many receptive mates as they can. But the females are picky. They'll outrun, outbox, and vault clear of any male they don't consider fit and athletic enough to mate with. Unlike the hares and most of their grouse relatives, ptarmigan will seek out a single mate. But at this point in the season, it's more about chasing other males around the resort. The white creatures will need to be very careful now. Their lives depend on their camouflage. And the thaw has started to expose clear patches of heather. If the snow melts early, they'll be an easy target for the eagles. Further down the mountain, the hills are now completely clear of snow. Black grouse, close relatives of the ptarmigan, are also starting their mating displays. Although the females won't appear at these courtship sites, called leks, until the spring, the males compete year-round. They're working out who's the dominant bird. It's a three-way contest to gain control of the best spot in the lek. The wheezing calls and plumped-up feathers are all part of the display. But the real clincher is the eyebrows. Large eyebrows are a sign of high testosterone. And the bigger and brighter the brows, the more attractive the male will be to females in the spring. As the hours of sunlight increase, the thaw picks up pace. Even high on the peaks, the patches of exposed heather are growing. Perfect camouflage for red grouse. But the hares are now at risk of attack from the eagles. Mountain hares always flee uphill because eagles need height to strike. This closes the gap and reduces their ability to maneuver. The eagle flushes a ptarmigan and switches target. But the eagles aren't the only predators here. Ravens can also kill a tired hare. But hares can run at nearly 45 miles an hour, so it stays out of reach and slips into the heather just in time. It's unusual for snow to lie in the whole Highland region for more than a few weeks. Although it's still only January, the temperatures have at last started to climb above freezing. Rivers and burns now churn with meltwater. And the Highland animals are at last granted a brief reprieve from the onslaught of winter. Even now, there are signs of the season's end. New spring salmon have started to enter the river systems, embarking on the same epic journey that ended for others only 2 months ago. These spring salmon are revered by Highlanders. On the great rivers like the Dee, Tay and Spey, they're given a hero's welcome before the river is opened for the fishing season.
Lord of creation, we ask that you will bless this living water of the Spey. Flow, river, flow. Fill our hearts with joy and gladness and thanksgiving always. Amen.
Whiskey is poured into the river, a gesture to wish the salmon good health. And at last, with great anticipation, the anglers can cast their lines. The seasons have come full circle. And spring feels close at last. The animals that have survived the challenges of the long haul will now face up to the intensity of spring. With an uncertain future for our climate, living wild in the Highlands looks set to become more extreme than ever. But this living landscape has been changing and renewing itself for millennia. So the Scottish Highlands will always be one of the world's most magical, wild places. Next time, the people of the Highlands. Over the centuries, many of the riches of these wild places have been lost. With forests cut down and wild animals driven to extinction. But now they're returning. Never before have so many people found new and surprising ways of putting back what we've lost. Wild animals and people have always lived side by side in the Highlands. Sharing the same landscape and experiencing the same seasons. But over the years, humans have shaped this place, stamping their authority on the landscape. And dominating their wild neighbors. The Highlands may look like 20,000 square miles of pure wilderness. But for millennia, people have left their mark on these mountains and valleys. The natural forest which once covered this landscape was cleared for farmland and felled for timber, while grazing by livestock and deer prevented young trees from growing back. And while some species flourished, others were driven to extinction by habitat loss and overhunting. But now the balance is changing, and people have started to realize just how much we need to put back. Never before have the modern Highlands seen so much work being done to repair the damage of the past. One bird more than any other sums up the changing relationship between people and the Highland landscape. The Osprey. This is the Trossachs National Park in the Southern Highlands. Lush forest, rugged mountains and excellent fishing make this some of the best osprey habitat in Scotland. Several breeding pairs have successfully set up home here.
It's a nest just up here.
Conservation manager Dave Anderson and his colleague Simon Smith know every detail of the lives of the ospreys that live here. Today they're visiting a nest as part of a continuing study.
I'll carry everything then, shall I?
Yeah. Well, I work for the Forestry Commission, and within our land holdings we have a huge range of species, a lot of different birds of prey, and the osprey being one of them. And the general public rely on us to protect the wildlife that's in here.
Simon's an experienced climber, and he needs to be. Is 50 feet to the top. The parent birds are aware of his presence and have already taken to the wing.
Sounds like she's pleased to see us.
To the parent birds, Simon is a potential predator. They call to their chicks to lie flat, camouflaging themselves in the nest.
Ospreys nest typically right in the very crown of the tree, and these birds are cryptically coloured so that any predator, a big eagle flying over the top of them, would look down and they don't actually think that there's anything on the nest.
Dave and Simon visit the nests every year. The chicks are given a thorough checkup and will be weighed, measured and ringed. The process provides invaluable data on the development and movement of the osprey population in these forests.
Osprey is a really great conservation story. They've gone from strength to strength, and now we're probably looking at a population across the UK of nearly 300 pairs. These ospreys, when they leave here, they're going to go back to west coast of Africa or Portugal or Spain to overwinter, and they'll do that for 2 years before returning back to the UK. Hopefully they'll end up back in Scotland. That's where I'd like to see them anyway. But the population around this area is doing really well.
It's an extraordinary comeback story. At the turn of the century, the osprey was virtually extinct as a breeding bird in Scotland, wiped out by egg collectors and hunters. But in the 1950s, after an absence of nearly 40 years, the osprey came back. It all started in a forest near Aviemore, 120 miles north of the Trossachs. In 1954, a pair of Scandinavian birds appeared and bred at Loch Garten, which is now an RSPB reserve. But the nest was repeatedly raided by egg collectors. In response, the RSPB rolled out Operation Osprey, which became its most powerful weapon in the battle to protect these birds. At its heart was a revolutionary concept that's now fundamental to modern conservation: the idea of public engagement. Jennifer Clark is the RSPB Information Officer at Loch Garten.
When they first bred, rather than keeping it a secret, we decided that it would be better to tell the public about this and to invite them to come and see these birds, with the idea that if we told the public about what was happening to them and people came to see the birds, that people would be on the side of the birds and not the side of the egg collectors, and just to change people's opinions and ideas on how we treat nature. And it works. If you speak to any children now about egg collecting, they don't know what it is. Do you want to have a guess? What do you think happened when those first ospreys came back?
The dedication of people like Jennifer is inspiring visitors who come to the reserve.
Do you think they hatched into chicks? It's all about showing people wildlife, nature, showing them their ospreys, educating them about what we do here on the reserve and the wider work that RSPB does. So it's an educational platform and a great way to gain support.
It's this public engagement that has helped to protect the osprey, allowing it to expand its range across the Highlands and beyond.
I love wildlife, I love nature. The story of the Ospreys is gripping, the whole history of this place. The brilliant thing about Ospreys is they came back on their own. We didn't bring them back, they just turned up. And when they did, we protected what was there. And to say that we've got 300 breeding pairs across the country now is fantastic. And last year, which was the 60th anniversary of Ospreys returning to Scotland, we had our 100th chick fledged from the Lochgarten nest, so that's a nice success story in conservation.
The Osprey's comeback is an extraordinary tale. And the Highlands are full of stories like this. Stories of survival. And stories of change. Generation after generation of families have lived and worked here. And like the wildlife, people too have learned to endure the seasons. Towering above the town of Aviemore are the high tops of the Cairngorms, a little piece of the Arctic in the Highlands of Scotland. Here, only species adapted to sub-zero conditions can survive. This is the coldest place in Britain, where temperatures can fall as low as -27 degrees. Fiona Smith and her colleague Abigail are trekking up the mountainside in search of a herd of animals perfectly adapted to this life in the freezer. They're reindeer, the only free-ranging herd in Britain.
The Cairngorms is the only habitat in Britain that reindeer can live naturally. Because of its vegetation that grows, because of the climate we get here, it gets the Arctic and subarctic ecosystem, and that is where reindeer thrive, it's where they live, it's where they come from.
The 150-strong herd do get a helping hand and extra food from the Cairngorm Reindeer Centre, owned and run by Fiona's family.
To have such a tame animal in such a wild environment, I think it's really special. And they're super friendly and super greedy, and yeah, they're just a delight to be around. I couldn't see myself in a city stuck in an office, that's for sure. I mean, it gets you out and about, which is obviously nice. Working with the reindeer, you know, they're a great animal to work with. And I think it's something about working in their environment with such a tame animal. There's not many opportunities you could do that. So yeah, no, it's pretty special.
Reindeer became extinct in Britain at the end of the last ice age. But then in 1952, a herd was reintroduced from Scandinavia. Since then, these iconic animals have been thriving. In the late 1980s, Fiona's parents, Tilly and Alan, bought the herd and took on its management.
When I came up to work with the reindeer, I felt I had found my place. I had a passion for deer, which I got from my own father. I did a degree in zoology, and I knew about the reindeer in Scotland, so I came to work here as a volunteer in 1981. The reindeer were endearing, the mountains were fantastic, and the keeper wasn't bad looking, so we got married. I think they are certainly in harmony with the environment. They're living and browsing on the natural vegetation that is growing here. But we have a role as well here. We have to be sensible about the numbers of reindeer that we actually have on the ground. And so we do control the breeding. We do make sure we keep our numbers that are sustainable to the environment they're living in.
Businesses like Tilly and Fiona's depend on tourism. Nature-based tourism brings £1.4 billion a year to the Scottish economy.
We are a tourist attraction because you need an income for anything, and the tourism brings that income to the herd. We run an adoption scheme, so people adopt the reindeer. It becomes quite a sort of close-knit community of people that are just reindeer enthusiasts.
Without a doubt, I belong here in the Highlands because of the reindeer. For me, they provide me with all my joy. They are just lovely animals to be amongst. They come and they go. The next descendants come through and become those characters. And knowing an animal personally in such a beautiful wild environment is an honour, I would say.
"4,000 feet below the reindeer's icy world, the Great Caledonian pine forest is cloaked in the first snowfall of the year. Although winter can be tough on wildlife, the season can be the most beautiful of the Highland year. For photographer Neil McIntyre, it's the perfect opportunity to capture the ways in which wildlife copes with the extreme conditions.
Photographing in the Highlands is a big part of me, you know. It's my way of communicating with the things I see and with other people, you know. It really all revolves around the picture taking. You take a picture, don't take what you see, take what you feel. And I think if you put that principle in, it does tell in the pictures. You know, it's not just about one little still image, it goes far beyond that. And it gives you a connection to wildlife, there's no doubt about that. For me it does anyway.
Neil has lived on the edge of the Cairngorms National Park all his life.
My father was a gamekeeper, and he got a job up in the Highlands here, and moved here when I was just a young boy. That was how I really got into it. I'm not somebody that can sadly write particularly well for, you know, telling stories and things like that. So I seen photography as a means for me to communicate to other people what I was seeing and how special some of these things were.
As well as being a successful wildlife photographer, Neil shares his passion for this corner of the Highlands with visitors who come here on photographic safaris.
Highlands has always been a bit of a mecca for a lot of outdoor people. You know, traditionally it's been the hunting, shooting, fishing people that have come to the Highlands to do these very things, and that will continue. But without a shadow of doubt, over the last decade probably, there's been quite a considerable increase in the amount of people wanting to do similar things, but shoot it with a camera instead of obviously shooting it with a rifle or a gun. So there's no reason both these things can't work together.
You get nice soft backlighting here in the morning, you know, because it sort of filters through the trees. It's not too harsh, it's quite nice.
I like to focus on individual species and spend as much time I can with them, particularly things like the red squirrels and crested tits, for example, are the two ones I probably spend the most time with. The thing about a photograph, you're capturing a moment in time, and then you can do that, and then the animal or bird just goes about its daily business again, and it's as if you've never been there. With one word, it's magic. It's a magic place. It has an aura about it that very few places have. It's got the wildlife, it's got the mountains, the lochs, the glens, and the light you get is second to none. There's hardly a day, certainly when I'm outside, that you don't look around you and think, you know, I'm a very lucky fella.
The Caledonian pine forest, at the heart of the national park, is Scotland's most iconic woodland wilderness. "6,000 years ago, these forests covered nearly 6,000 square miles and formed a vast band of northern forest that stretched across 3 continents. The Romans called it the Great Wood of Caledon. Rich in Scots pine, birch, oak and rowan trees, this forest was a special place for wildlife. But over the last 2,000 years, these woods were decimated. Today, perhaps just 1% of the ancient forest remains. Dr. David Hetherington is a national park ecologist and has a special interest in the restoration of these woodlands.
At around 4,500 square kilometres, the Cairngorms National Park is one of the largest national parks in the whole of Europe. We have some really special fragments, remnants left of Caledonian forests, which are really quite distinctive of this part of Scotland. But it's important to say that this is not some uninhabited wilderness. The Cairngorms National Park is home to 18,000 people who live here and who work here.
A familiar cast of characters can still be found in these ancient woodlands. But deep in the undergrowth lives an equally important set of animals, the keystone species of this forest microworld. Hayley Wiswell is an ecologist for the Cairngorms National Park Authority.
And they're all very, very dark.
She introduces groups of naturalists, rangers and foresters to the miniature world of the forest floor.
Invertebrates are absolutely vital for the health of the forest because of the variety of roles that they play, whether they're food for the small birds or mammals, or whether they're decomposing dead wood, breaking it down and turning it into nutrients that the forest can use. So they're extraordinarily important.
This enormous nest is home to Hayley's favourite species, the Scottish wood ant. These bustling ant cities can be 6 feet wide. Their presence indicates a healthy forest.
The wood ants themselves are kind of a keystone species, if you like. Not only are they nurturing aphid colonies in the trees, which reduce the capacity of the tree to grow leaves, but they also do other things, like they disperse seeds. So some plants in the pine forest produce seeds that are only dispersed by ants. And then the wood ant colony itself, the actual nest, is home to species of invertebrates that are only found in wood ant nests and not found anywhere else. They're helping the trees to grow, they're helping plants to grow, they're supporting all these other organisms. I think the forest would be a different place without them. You might have dozens of nests in a hectare forest. So that's millions and millions of ants running around. So in terms of sheer biomass, they're definitely the apex predator of the Caledonian pine forests.
Centuries ago, apex predators of a very different kind roamed these forests. The ancient people here shared their woodland home with lynx, bears, and wolves. Eventually, we hunted these animals to extinction. But one predator has managed to hang on. The Scottish wildcat. What it lacks in size, it makes up for in ferocity. Nicknamed the Highland tiger, this cat is even more endangered than its striped Asian cousin.
This is not a domestic cat that has gone wild. This is a truly wild animal that moved in here shortly after the glaciers left Britain. Unfortunately, it really is in trouble. Its range has contracted massively from once having covered the whole of Britain to just parts of the Scottish Highlands. But the real problem that the wildcat faces is because it's quite closely related genetically to the domestic cat, it can actually interbreed and produce fertile hybrids. And this is a real problem because with each passing generation, the wildcat is becoming more and more diluted and less distinctive of that native animal that we've had for so long in Scotland.
A coordinated conservation effort has set up Scottish Wildcat Action. It's the first national effort to protect the cats in the wild and has established a conservation breeding programme. Douglas Richardson is head of living collections at the Highland Wildlife Park.
I firmly believe that a healthy captive population of Scottish wildcats in high quality environments will be crucial to the survival of the species. At the very least, that safety net role that they play. Someone alluded to captive breeding programs are like lifeboats on an ocean liner. You hope you never have to use one, but it's nice to know that they're there.
Captive bred wildcats, like 11-year-old Hamish, are being exchanged between parks to mate with genetically strong females to secure the future bloodline. Today, Hamish is being loaned to the Agas Field Centre near Inverness in the hope that he'll breed with one of their female wildcats.
Hello, what's all this? What's this? He's quite a character. He's not at all dangerous. Though saying that, I wouldn't want him to land on the top of my head. He's very good with females and he's excellent with his offspring. I've actually seen him carrying and cleaning his kittens on occasion.
If Hamish and his female companions are successful, their descendants may eventually be released back into the Highlands, but only into protected areas.
I want to get that captive program to a level that if it all goes belly up as far as the wild population is concerned, we still have that cushion.
It's not just about captive breeding in some of these facilities, it's about education and raising awareness, making people aware that we have this fantastic animal living in the wild here in Scotland and it does need our help.
If animals like the wildcat are to successfully re-establish themselves in the Highlands, it's critical there's enough habitat for them to live in. Their original home in the Caledonian forest is only just recovering from centuries of exploitation and neglect.
It's really in the last few decades we've begun to realise that these old forest remnants that, are a link back to the end of the Ice Age need our help, and that there's been some fantastic work done to try and expand those forests and save them from any further damage. And here in the Cairngorms National Park we see a whole variety of different projects where the native woodland is coming back and really quite spectacularly. Old fragments are beginning to join up with one another, the woodlands are gradually moving up the hill through natural regeneration. So a fantastic area for the kind of landscape scale forest restoration.
On the edge of Abernethy Forest, Desmond Dugan is helping the forest regenerate naturally, using sensitive and low-impact methods of replanting.
In recent years, the pine forest has been receding down the hill because of man's management. Man has converted some of the woodlands here to heather moorland, perhaps for grouse shooting or for sheep ranching. So the forest has been lost, and we here at RSPB Abernethy are trying to encourage the sort of recolonisation of the forest. And we're trying to do that mostly by natural processes.
To further assist the growth and diversity of the forest, Desmond and his colleague Alison Greggins are sowing the seeds of native species like the alder.
This was all collected last autumn. It's been in the cold store between 2 and 4 degrees to keep it cool, to stop it germinating. We're now sowing some of the seed into the river, directly into the river here in this little stream here, and we're also scuffing some of the seed into the riverside gravel because alder is water distributed. The seed falls into the river, it's washed downstream and it gets lodged in little nooks and crannies downstream. Getting more forest is not just about creating a habitat for wildlife. We want to create a managed environment here so that people can come and enjoy, whether you enjoy just a quiet day's bird watching or visiting the Osprey Centre or perhaps botanising or doing whatever you enjoy in the natural landscape. It's very satisfying to walk through the forest because some of the trees are as old as 400 years old. And you can put your hand on the tree and make a wish for the future for your family or whatever. It's really quite a humbling experience. To feel the past, to walk through the forest is to feel the past.
Thanks to people like Desmond, the forest has a chance to flourish again. It's because of this kind of habitat restoration that real progress is being made in reintroducing endangered species.
We have a whole range of species now that we just didn't have 100 years ago. We'd lost them, they'd become extinct. Red squirrels were found in only 1 or 2 pockets of woodland here in the Cairngorms, and in other parts of the Highlands had to be reintroduced from elsewhere. The Capercaillie had actually gone extinct in Scotland and was reintroduced by private estates in the 19th century. We've seen the reintroduction of other birds of prey such as the red kite. So there's some real conservation successes, and I'm sure many of these will continue in the future.
Red kites are a soaring symbol of hope in the Highlands. Once persecuted to extinction here, the birds were reintroduced from Europe in the 1990s, after an absence of nearly 120 years. Dave Anderson is monitoring this new breeding population in the Trossachs.
The birds that we're monitoring here in central Scotland were put back in '96, and the population now is between 75 and 80 pairs.
Close to the nesting sites, Argati Farm's feeding station provides extra benefits for red kites and people.
Red kites need as much help as they can when they're first introduced to an area, and I think that these feeding stations offer not only a little bit of support, particularly in the winter time for red kites, but it also gives people an opportunity to bond with these birds that have been introduced into their area.
The Argati lunchtime acrobatics are guaranteed to impress. These spectacular birds of prey turn up in big numbers for the free handouts. Other birds of prey, like buzzards, are no match for this kind of aerial bombardment.
The kites swoop in, grab the food and fly away with it. They're not really wanting to be standing, walking about, because they do get mobbed, not just by the crows and by the buzzards, but by their own kind, because they're always stealing off each other. Wildlife is coming there to obviously get a free meal, and people can go there and enjoy it. And it's quite a spectacle in the winter time when you have 50, 60, 70 red kites wheeling over the tops of people. These are people who don't get the opportunities that people like myself get to go into nests. And I think it's really important that they get that opportunity. Otherwise, why would they even bother thinking about protecting them? Rewilding is one of these words that some people might not like, but we've sanitised quite a lot of the Highlands, and I think it's really important to get back to rewilding the land, and that might mean putting mammals back in here that have been missing for a long time, and birds. And the red kite was missing for a long, long time, and it's great to see it back.
But there are some people whose plans for rewilding are much more radical. "70 miles north of the Cairngorms, philanthropist Paul Lister has begun a rewilding project, restoring lost plant and animal species at his Allerdale Wilderness Reserve.
Well, we've been used to hundreds of years of a sterile landscape, like a dead zone, for, since the last 1,000 years, since the Norman conquest. We've been, sort of sanitizing our landscape. And so it's very difficult for people to understand, where we're at. Visitors, tourists come to Scotland and see these wonderful hills, open hills, treeless hills, and they think that's normal. Over the centuries, we've slowly taken it all apart, and until now we're just left with fragments of old forest. In fact, there's only 1% left. That's not much of a legacy, is it, to leave behind?
Paul wants to bring large carnivores back to Scotland. He and others believe that nature needs top predators like wolves and bears to help balance out the ecosystem. This will give vegetation a chance to recover from overgrazing by deer, benefiting all wildlife. He also believes these animals will benefit the people of the Highlands through ecotourism.
I think that there's a bigger picture that we're missing here to be able to bring back wolves and bears and create more revenue, more job opportunities, and really see the place come alive. And that's really what I hope for. I mean, look at the fantastic woods behind us here. Hundreds of years ago, there would have been wolves and bears in here. And it's just a shame that, to me, they're as magnificent as they look. It's kind of like a dead zone.
We've got to move forward, we've got to see some change, and we've got to progress. Life is not about the past, it's about the future. And we need to build a new future, a new consciousness, a new way of treating the landscape.
Biologically, lynx and wolves and bears and some of these other large mammal species could easily live in Scotland. The biological conditions are there. The biological conditions will probably improve with time as we get more woodland cover, etc. So yes, I mean, these large mammals could definitely live here, but of course the crucial factor is not the biology, it's the human environment. Are humans prepared to live alongside animals, which, undoubtedly beautiful and charismatic as they are, and undoubtedly could be part of a wildlife tourism initiative, but they will have impacts on, sometimes they will create problems. Are we prepared to live alongside them? And it's only really the people of Scotland who can make that decision.
"40 miles northwest of Allerdale, the Highlands meet the Atlantic. Here lie many of the great seabird colonies that have made the Highlands world famous. Tens of thousands of pairs of birds come here every spring and summer to breed, jostling for space to raise a family along the dizzying ledges and cliff tops. Paul Walton is head of Habitats and Species for the RSPB, and these vibrant communities are his special passion.
People can come to Scotland, they can come to the Highlands, they can visit these incredible seabird colonies, and it is, to my mind, every bit as spectacular as a visit to the Serengeti in Africa. It really is one of the world's greatest wildlife spectacles.
Of all the birds that inhabit these extraordinary seabird cities, the Guillemot is Paul's favourite. Over 30,000 of these birds annually crowd the cliff ledges to breed. One of the largest concentrations of guillemots in Europe. It's hard to imagine a more precarious place to raise a family. Seabirds are important indicators of change in the health of this marine world. But despite their apparent abundance here, numbers are in decline. The cause seems to link directly to climate change.
Seabirds are actually the end of a marine food chain. And it seems to be that in recent decades, that food chain has been undergoing some really quite profound changes. Warm water plankton species, which aren't as rich in nutrients, are taking over from the Arctic plankton species, which were traditionally the food of the sand eels and other fish which the seabirds eat. And also we're seeing an overall reduction in the abundance of that plankton that the fish eat. And this seems to be having knock-on effects up the food chain. We look out there at the ocean and people tend to think, you know, that's genuinely a wilderness, that's wild out there, it's the last frontier. But there is absolutely no doubt that human activity is having a profound effect on the marine environment and on the wildlife that depends on it. So they're facing multiple pressures, and those pressures are really beginning to show now and have effects on our seabird populations and driving them into decline. And this is a global issue.
But while climate change remains an international problem, there are local success stories for colonies like these in Scotland.
One area that proves that people can really make a difference is in the idea of marine protected areas. Now, we have protected areas on land, and we have done for decades. The marine environment, it's been much slower, but we're making real progress now. It remains to be seen how well they'll be managed. That's a challenge for us all. But it was public pressure that brought about this critical change, and it is real progress.
Scotland has 30 marine protected areas, supporting an abundance of wildlife. With over 20 different whale and dolphin species, the Highland coastline provides a rich habitat for cetaceans. "90 miles east of the seabird colonies lies a great funnel-shaped estuary called the Murray Firth. WDC, Whale and Dolphin Conservation, are based here and run a program called Shore Watch. They work with 23 coastal communities, aiming to engage them in protecting the marine environment. Katie Dyke is their conservation officer.
We work with local communities and we encourage them and engage with volunteers to look for whales and dolphins for us.
As you're scanning, you're just looking for splashes, feeding birds, any like break in the water, any discontinuity in the water that you might think, oh, there's something there.
Yeah. We analyse all this data so that we can better understand the movements of whales and dolphins around the Scottish coastline, and then we can use that to advise governments and developers on how to protect the cetaceans that we have around Scotland. Scotland actually has a really rich marine wildlife, a huge abundance of different marine mammals. And that probably doesn't spring to mind to a lot of people, because I think when people look at whales and dolphins, they see tropical climates and warm waters, and they think that's where they're going to see whales and dolphins, where actually Scotland is one of the best places to see whales and dolphins, particularly from the shoreline.
These coastal waters are regularly visited by a resident population of almost 200 bottlenose dolphins.
We've actually got the world's biggest bottlenose dolphin. They're the most northern bottlenose dolphin of the world, and basically they're the biggest. So they're 4 meters long. They're absolutely huge. They're kind of relatives across the world. So you've got bottlenose dolphin in California and Australia, and they're only about 2 meters long. So our bottlenose dolphin are double the size. Basically, they're kind of the fattest in the world, I think. You know, they've got a lot of food around here. They've got a lot of fatty fish to eat. They've got salmon, and they basically have to stay nice and warm in this weather, so they've got an extra layer of blubber.
This is a very special group of bottlenose dolphins. The only surviving population in the North Sea. They live on the very edge, isolated and vulnerable. And they share their home with people, living alongside oil rigs, boats, and busy harbours. It's a world that's become noisier and more polluted over the last century. But they're holding on. And each year they provide thousands of visitors with an unforgettable wildlife watching experience. No one knows the Murray Firth dolphins better than Charlie Phillips. Like Katie, he's a field officer for WDC. Charlie is cataloguing the unique markings on each animal's dorsal fin.
It means that we can keep tabs on what the population's doing just through the power of photography. We don't need to try and stick transmitters or markers on individual dolphins because they already have individual markings on their dorsal fins caused naturally by themselves.
Charlie's got to know the pod so well, he's given names to many of the individual dolphins.
When you're involved in studying them for any length of time, you not only begin to recognize them as individuals, but recognize them as individual characters too. They're amazing. I've spent 20 years watching and studying them and photographing them and filming them, and every day is different. There's no 2 days the same.
Charlie's favourite spot is Chanonry Point, a shingle spit sticking straight out into the Murray Firth. When the Atlantic salmon begin their spawning runs, the dolphins gather here on a rising tide. If you time it right, you can enjoy one of Scotland's most extraordinary wildlife spectacles.
The bottlenose dolphins have figured out a method of hunting where if they wait for an incoming tide, as the tide rushes past the tip of this peninsula, it creates tremendous whirlpools and eddies, and the migratory salmon that are coming through this area seem to congregate in one narrow spot, and the dolphins basically wait on this tidal current, almost like a supermarket conveyor belt, bringing the food towards them. Every now and again, a dolphin will take a fish that it's not quite comfortable swallowing. So what it's got to do is it's got to physically regurgitate it and then re-swallow it. It can sometimes take a dolphin 45 minutes, 50 minutes to swallow a really large fish. But it's worth it because that huge packet of protein and nutrition, it's worth spending the time putting that down your stomach because you don't know where you're going to get the next one from.
People won't protect what they don't understand, and they won't watch what they don't know is there. And it's a really unique opportunity that people have that live around this local area, that there's dolphins on your doorstep and you can go outside and stand on the shoreline and watch these remarkable creatures.
The people of the Highlands are rediscovering their connection to wildlife,
And I think feeding underneath them.
proving that public engagement and positive action can, and does, make a real difference.
If we can grab children's attention now and get them excited about nature now, then hopefully that'll stay with them. And it'll stay with them into adulthood, and they are the people who are going to be looking after this in 20, 30 years' time, so we really want to grab their attention now.
We see the Highlands as a bit of a unique area within the whole of the UK. it's seen as a wild place, and it is still a wild place, and I really like being a part of it. And I'm not sick of it yet, and I hope I never will be.
The Highlands, for me, it's home. It's where my ancestors come from. It's a beautiful part of the world. It's got some fantastic nature, but for me as an ecologist, I feel there's a job to be done. You know, we've got to repair some of the damage to make this an even better place for future generations to live.
The Highlands to me means freedom. It means getting out there in a clean place that's still got areas where you won't see another living soul from morning to night. But there's also pristine environments that we can enjoy too. If we do it carefully, then hopefully those pristine environments will still be pristine in years to come. It's a place that I'd never ever want to leave.
The Highlands have inspired people for generations. But keeping them wild and diverse is our responsibility. Rebuilding a strong natural environment will benefit everyone. If we can learn to respect and take responsibility for this place, then the Highlands have every chance of staying wild and wonderful for people and for animals.